The turkey was golden brown, the wine was flowing, and the dining room buzzed with the comfortable chaos of our annual Thanksgiving gathering. 23 family members crammed around Mom's extended table, sharing stories and catching up on another year of life. Everything felt perfect until my brother Jake cleared his throat with that familiar smirk I'd learned to dread. "So, everyone," Jake announced, raising his wine glass theatrically, "I think we should all toast to my little sister Emma's adorable hobby business." His voice dripped with the kind of condescending sweetness that made my stomach clench. "She's been making these cute little soaps and candles in her apartment for what, 3 years now? Still hasn't made enough to cover her rent. But hey, we all need our pastimes, right?" The table erupted in uncomfortable laughter. Cousin Mike snorted into his mashed potatoes. Aunt Patricia patted my shoulder with that pitying look, reserved for lost causes. Uncle Frank raised his glass with mock solemnity to Emma's little soap empire. I sat there frozen, my face burning, as 22 pairs of eyes turned to me with varying degrees of amusement and pity. My handmade business cards, which I'd nervously distributed earlier, suddenly felt like jokes scattered across the table. My carefully crafted elevator pitch about artisanal bath products died in my throat. It's actually called Moonlight Botanicals. I managed to whisper, but my voice was drowned out by another wave of chuckles. Jake wasn't finished. He leaned back in his chair, the picture of corporate success in his tailored blazer, and continued his performance. I mean, don't get me wrong, they smell nice and everything. But let's be realistic here, okay? Emma's been at this for 3 years, and she's still working at that coffee shop downtown. Meanwhile, I just got promoted to senior account manager. He straightened his tie with exaggerated pride. 6-figure salary, company car, full benefits. That's what I call a real career. Dad nodded approvingly. Jake's always been the practical one. Steady job, good head on his shoulders, unlike some people, Mom added with a pointed look in my direction, who chase after fairy tales instead of facing reality. The words hit me like physical blows. I'd been pouring my heart and soul into Moonlight Botanicals for 3 years, working 16-hour days between my coffee shop shifts and my tiny apartment workshop. Every evening, I'd come home exhausted, only to spend hours mixing essential oils, pouring wax, and hand-cutting soaps. My social life had evaporated. My dating life was non-existent. My savings account was practically empty. But I believed in what I was building. "The thing is," Jake continued, clearly enjoying his audience, "Emma's always been a dreamer. Remember? When she wanted to be a professional dancer, a travel blogger, a photographer. This soap thing is just the latest phase. She'll move on to something else soon enough. More laughter, more pitying looks, more of that familiar shame washing over me like a tide." After dinner, as I helped clear the dishes, Jake approached me in the kitchen. The rest of the family had moved to the living room for football, leaving us alone among the dirty plates and leftover cranberry sauce. "Hey, Em," he said, his voice softer now, but still carrying that undertone of superiority. "I wasn't trying to be mean out there. I just worry about you, you know?" He pulled a napkin from the counter and scribbled something on it with a pen from his shirt pocket. Then he handed it to me with what I'm sure he thought was a caring expression. The napkin read, "Don't waste your life on pipe dreams. Look," he continued, "I know you're passionate about this craft stuff, but passion doesn't pay bills. You're 28 years old, Emma. Most people our age are buying houses, starting families, building real careers. You're still playing with soap ingredients like a kid with a chemistry set." I stared at the napkin, my hands trembling slightly. "Jake, I'm not saying this to hurt you," he interrupted. "I'm saying it because I care. Maybe it's time to grow up and get a real job. I could probably get you an interview at my company. Nothing fancy, maybe an administrative position, but it would be stable, respectable." He walked away then, leaving me standing in the kitchen, holding his napkin, surrounded by the remnants of a meal that had turned into my public humiliation. I folded the napkin carefully and slipped it into my purse, not knowing why I was keeping It just knowing that I wasn't ready to throw it away. He walked away smug, never realizing how long that napkin would stay with me. The napkin lived in my wallet for the next 4 years. It's a constant reminder of that Thanksgiving dinner and everything. Jake thought I'd never become. But instead of crushing my spirit, his words became fuel for a fire I didn't even know was burning inside me. My apartment was a testament to organized chaos. The living room had been transformed into a production line. Shelves lined with essential oils, drawers filled with soap molds, and a folding table where I packaged orders late into the night. The kitchen counter was permanently stained with various colorful waxes from candle-making experiments. My bedroom closet had become a storage unit for finished products. Leaving me with barely enough space for my own clothes, I was living on instant ramen and cheap coffee, working 40 hours a week at the coffee shop to pay rent. Then spending another 50 hours building moonlight botanicals. Sleep became a luxury I couldn't afford. Social events became foreign concepts. My friends stopped inviting me out because I was always too busy with soap stuff. Meanwhile, Jake's social media fed me a constant stream of his success. New car. Photos with captions like upgraded to the BMW, hard work pays off. Pictures from expensive restaurants. Client dinner at the best steakhouse in town. Vacation photos from Cabo. Well-deserved break from crushing it at the office. Family gatherings became exercises in endurance. Every birthday, every holiday, every casual get-together included updates on Jake's latest achievements and subtle digs at my hobby. Mom would ask when I was going to get serious about life. Dad would mention job openings at his friend's insurance company. Cousins would share job listings they'd found online, just in case I was interested in something more stable. But what they didn't see was happening behind closed doors. They didn't see my first online sale of lavender soap set to a customer in Oregon who left a 5-star review saying my products helped her sleep better than anything she'd tried. They didn't see me crying happy tears when I reached $500 in monthly sales, then $1,000, then $2,000. They didn't see the late nights I spent learning about search engine optimization, social media marketing, and customer service. They didn't see the boxes of rejected products I donated to local shelters rather than sell something that didn't meet my standards. They didn't see the detailed spreadsheets I maintained, tracking every expense, every sale, every customer interaction. Most importantly, they didn't see the growing community of customers who weren't just buying products, they were buying into a brand that stood for quality, sustainability, and personal care. My email list grew from 10 subscribers to 100, then 1,000. My social media following expanded organically as satisfied customers shared photos of their purchases. Year 3 brought my first major breakthrough. A lifestyle blogger with 50,000 followers discovered my products at a local farmer's market and wrote a glowing review. Overnight, my website crashed from traffic. I sold out of inventory in 2 days. I had to put up a temporarily out-of-stock notice while I frantically worked to fulfill the surge of orders. That's when I realized I'd outgrown my apartment setup. I rented a small warehouse space on the outskirts of town, used my savings to buy professional equipment, and hired my first employee, Sarah, a recent college graduate who believed in the brand as much as I did. Year 4 brought expansion into retail partnerships. Small boutiques started carrying my products. A regional spa chain placed a wholesale order that tripled my monthly revenue. I hired 2 more employees and invested in professional packaging that made my products look like they belonged in high-end stores, but the real validation came from my customers. 5-star reviews poured in daily. Repeat customers became brand ambassadors. I started receiving emails from people telling me how my products had helped their skin conditions, how my candles had made their homes feel more peaceful, how supporting my small business had made them feel good about their purchases. What he didn't see was that every snide comment only fueled me harder. Every family gathering where he showcased his success while dismissing mine became motivation for another late night in the workshop. fact, every time someone asked when I was going to get a real job. Fact, I worked another hour on building something real by the end of year 4. Moonlight Botanicals was generating more revenue than Jake's salary. But I kept that information to myself, reinvesting profits into growth, building something sustainable rather than flashy. I drove the same old Honda, lived in the same small apartment, and continued to let my family believe I was still playing. With soap, the real transformation was happening behind the scenes in spreadsheets and bank statements they never saw. In customer relationships they couldn't understand. In a vision of success they couldn't fathom. The call came on a Tuesday morning in March. I was in my warehouse training a new employee on proper soap cutting techniques when my phone rang. It was Mom, and her voice carried a weight I'd never heard before. "Emma, honey, I have some news about Jake." I stepped into my office, a real office with a desk and filing cabinets and a window that looked out onto the loading dock where delivery trucks came to pick up wholesale orders. "His company went under," Mom continued. "The whole thing collapsed overnight. Some kind of financial scandal with the executives. Jake found out yesterday morning that he's unemployed. No severance, no benefits, nothing. They're even taking back his company car." The irony wasn't lost on me. While Jake had been flaunting his corporate success and mocking my pipe dreams, I'd been quietly building something that couldn't be taken away by executive decisions or economic downturns. How is he handling it? I asked, though I could already imagine the answer. Not well. He's been calling everyone he knows, trying to find another position, but the whole industry seems to be struggling. He's talking about having to sell his condo, maybe move back in with us temporarily. As Mom talked, I looked around my office. The walls were covered with framed certificates, business license, organic certification, awards from local business associations. My desk held neat stacks of purchase orders from retailers across 3 states. Through the window, I could see my 12 employees finishing up the morning production run. What Jake didn't know was that his industry's collapse had actually boosted my business. As people tightened their budgets and looked for more meaningful purchases, they were turning to small businesses like mine. The economic uncertainty that had destroyed his career had driven customers to seek out products that felt personal, authentic, and trustworthy. In the past 6 months, I'd opened a second warehouse, launched a subscription box service, and started shipping internationally. My products were now carried in over 200 stores across the country. I'd hired a full-time marketing manager, a customer service team, and a logistics coordinator. My annual revenue had crossed the 7-figure mark. But the real milestone had come 3 months earlier when I'd finally felt secure enough to make a purchase I'd been dreaming about for years. I'd bought Mom's house not to live in, but to pay off the mortgage she'd been struggling with since Dad's retirement. I'd also set up a trust fund for my parents' care, ensuring they'd never have to worry about medical expenses or living costs. The same week, Jake lost his job. I received notification that Moonlight Botanicals had been selected for a major retail partnership with a national chain. The contract would multiply my business by 5 and establish my products in thousands of stores across the country. I feel so bad for him, Mom continued. He worked so hard to build his career, and now it's all gone. He's talking about maybe starting over in a different field, but he doesn't know where to begin. I thought about the napkin in my wallet, now worn soft from years of being folded and unfolded. "Don't waste your life on pipe dreams." It's still read in Jake's confident handwriting. "I'm sure he'll figure something out," I said diplomatically. Jake's always been resourceful. But as I hung up the phone, I couldn't help but reflect on the strange turns life takes. The brother who'd mocked my pathetic side hustle for years was now facing the exact instability he'd warned me about. The pipe dream he'd dismissed had become the safety net he'd never thought to build. Funny how life works. The pipe dream paid off, and his safe bet turned to smoke. Over the next few weeks, I heard updates about Jake's job search through family calls and social media. His LinkedIn profile changed from senior account manager to open 2 new opportunities. Facebook posts shifted from bragging about client dinners to sharing motivational quotes about resilience. His Instagram stories showed him at coffee shops with his laptop, networking and exploring new possibilities. I watched it all with a mixture of sympathy and vindication. Part of me genuinely felt bad for him. Losing a job is never easy, and the stress of financial uncertainty can break a person. But another part of me, the part that had endured years of condescension and ridicule, felt a satisfaction I wasn't entirely proud of. The universe, it seemed, had its own sense of timing. The intercom on my desk buzzed on a Thursday afternoon in April. I was reviewing quarterly reports, preparing for a board meeting with my investors, as I now had investors interested in scaling Moonlight Botanicals nationally. Emma, my receptionist. Sarah's voice came through the speaker. Your brother Jake is here to see you. He says he doesn't have an appointment, but he's hoping you have a few minutes. I looked up from my financial projections, my heart racing unexpectedly. Through my office window, I could see him in the reception area, shifting nervously from foot to foot, holding a manila folder that I recognized as the universal symbol of job hunting, a resume portfolio. Tell him I'll be right out, I said, needing a moment to collect myself. I walked to the reception area, trying to keep my expression neutral. Jake stood up when he saw me, and I was struck by how different he looked. Gone was the confident corporate swagger. His shoulders were slightly hunched, his smile forced. And his clothes, while still professional, lacked the expensive polish I'd grown accustomed to seeing. Hey, Em, he said, his voice carrying a brightness that didn't quite reach his eyes. I hope I'm not interrupting anything important. Was just in the neighborhood and thought I'd stop by to see how the soap business is going. In the neighborhood was an interesting way to describe the industrial district where my warehouse was located. 20 minutes from anywhere Jake would normally have reason to be. Of course, I said. Come on back to my office. As we walked through the production floor, I watched Jake's eyes widen as he took in the scale of the operation. The warehouse hummed with activity, employees at stations packaging orders, machines filling containers, the shipping area buzzing with outgoing deliveries. This wasn't the cramped apartment setup he'd mocked years ago. Wow, he said, stopping to watch a worker screen printing labels. This is bigger than I expected. We reached my office, and I gestured for him to sit in one of the chairs across from my desk. He placed his folder carefully on his lap, and I noticed his hands trembling slightly. So, I said, settling into my chair, what brings you by? Jake cleared his throat and launched into what was clearly a rehearsed speech. Well, I've been doing some thinking since the whole situation with my company. You know how it is. Sometimes life throws you curveballs, and you have to reassess your priorities. I nodded, saying nothing. The thing is, he continued, I've been watching what you've built here. And I have to admit, I might have underestimated the potential of small business. There's something really impressive about what you've accomplished. The words sounded genuine, but I could hear the underlying calculation. This wasn't an apology or an acknowledgement of his past behavior, was a setup. I've been thinking that maybe it's time for me to try something different, he said, leaning forward slightly. Get away from the corporate world, maybe work with family, build something meaningful together. Here it comes, I thought. I know you're probably pretty busy running all this. He gestured around the office, and I thought maybe I could help. You out? I've got years of business experience, management skills, client relations expertise. I could take some of the burden off your shoulders, maybe help you scale to the next level. He opened his folder and pulled out a resume, sliding it across my desk. I put together a summary of my qualifications. I know it might seem like a step down from what I was doing before, but I think this could be a great opportunity for both of us. I picked up the resume, scanning the bullet points that detailed his corporate achievements. It was impressive, objectively speaking. But as I read, I couldn't help but remember every family gathering where he'd dismissed my work, every condescending comment about my little hobby, every eye roll when I'd tried to explain my business plans. This is quite a resume, I said, finally. But I'm curious what changed your mind about small business. I seem to remember you being pretty skeptical about entrepreneurship. Jake's smile flickered. You know, perspectives evolve. I mean, I always believed in your vision. Emma, I just worried that maybe the market wasn't ready for artisanal products. But clearly, I was wrong about that. The revisionist history was breathtaking. I sat back in my chair, studying my brother's face. He was trying so hard to rewrite the past to pretend that his years of mockery had been brotherly concern, rather than condescension. I see, I said. And what kind of role were you thinking about? Well, he said, visibly relaxing as he sensed what he thought was interest. I was thinking maybe something in business development or operations management. I know you've got a good thing going here. But with my experience in corporate strategy, I could help you expand more efficiently. Maybe we could look at franchising opportunities, or I could help you negotiate better deals with suppliers. I almost felt sorry until I remembered every smirk, every smug laugh, every dinner he turned into my humiliation. The memory of that Thanksgiving dinner came flooding back, along with all the other times he'd used my dreams as entertainment for our family. That's an interesting offer, I said, opening my desk drawer. But before we go any further, I want to show you something. I pulled out my wallet and extracted the napkin, now soft and worn from years of being carried with me. I unfolded it carefully and slid it across the desk toward him. Jake's eyes focused on the napkin, and I watched as recognition dawned on his face. His confident expression crumbled as he read his own handwriting. Don't waste your life on pipe dreams. The silence in the office was deafening. Outside, I could hear the normal sounds of the warehouse machines humming, people talking, orders being processed. But inside this room, the weight of years of history hung between us. Emma, Jake said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. Do you remember writing this? Chaos? Keeping my voice calm and professional. He nodded. Unable to speak, you gave this to me at Thanksgiving dinner 4 years ago? After you'd spent the entire evening making jokes about my pathetic side hustle and my cute little hobby? After you'd turned my business dreams into entertainment for our entire family? Jake's face had gone pale. I was trying to help. No, I interrupted gently. You were trying to feel superior. You were trying to make yourself look successful by making me look foolish. And you know what? It worked. Our whole family spent years seeing me as the dreamer and you as the practical one. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the loading dock where a truck was being loaded with orders destined for stores across the country. This pipe dream that you told me to abandon now employs 15 people, I continued. Generates more revenue in a month than you made in a year at your corporate job. It's allowed me to pay off mom and dad's mortgage, set up trust funds for their care, and build something that can't be taken away by executive decisions or economic downturns. I turned back to face him. Even if none of that were true, even if I were still struggling to make ends meet, what you did was wrong. You took something I was passionate about and turned it into a joke. You made me feel small and foolish for trying to build something meaningful. Jake was staring at the napkin, his hands clenched in his lap. I'm sorry, he said, and for the first time his voice sounded genuinely remorseful. I'm so sorry, Emma. I was wrong. I was completely wrong about everything. I know you are, I said, sitting back down. I forgive you. But forgiveness doesn't mean pretending the past didn't happen. It doesn't mean I have to offer you a job just because you need one now. I picked up his resume and handed it back. To him, I've chosen to build this company with people who believed in the vision from the beginning. People who didn't need to see success to respect the effort. People who understand that dreams aren't pipe dreams, they're just dreams that haven't been achieved yet. Jake took the resume with shaking hands. I understand, he said quietly. I don't deserve your help. I just ... I didn't know where else to turn. There are other opportunities out there, I said, not unkindly. You're talented and experienced. You'll find something, but it won't be here. He stood up slowly, still holding the napkin. Can I keep this? It's yours, I said. You wrote it. As he walked toward the door, he turned back one more time. For what it's worth, I'm proud of what you've built. I was wrong about everything, but I'm proud of you. Thank you, I said. That means more than, after he left, I sat in my office for a long time, processing the encounter. There was no triumphant feeling, no sense of victory. Just a quiet satisfaction that I'd stood up for myself and the business I'd built from nothing. The weeks following Jake's visit brought a strange sense of closure. I'd spent years carrying the weight of his dismissal, using it as fuel to prove him wrong. Now that the moment of reckoning had passed, I found myself thinking less about the past and more about the future. Moonlight Botanicals continued to grow. The National Retail Partnership launched successfully, placing my products in over 2,000 stores across the country. I hired a crew to handle day-to-day operations, freeing me to focus on product development and strategic planning. The company I'd started in my apartment was now being discussed in business magazines as a case study in successful entrepreneurship. But the real change was in my family dynamics. Word of Jake's visit had somehow made its way through the family grapevine, and suddenly everyone wanted to hear about my business. Mom called weekly for updates. Dad started telling his friends about his entrepreneur daughter. Cousins who'd once pitied my soap hobby were now asking for business advice. Jake and I didn't speak for several weeks after his visit. Then one evening, I received a text from him. Saw the article about Moonlight Botanicals in Forbes. Credible. Achievement? You deserve all the success. I stared at the message for a long time before responding. Thank you. How are you doing? Better, he replied. Found a job with a smaller company. Less money, but more stability. Learning to appreciate what I have instead of always wanting more. Over the following months, we began to rebuild our relationship slowly. Jake never asked for a job again, and I never offered one. But we started having real conversations for the first time in years. He told me about his struggles with unemployment, his fear of financial ruin, his realization that his identity had been too wrapped up in his corporate success. I shared stories about the early days of my business, the nights I'd cried from exhaustion, moments I'd almost given up. The napkin became a symbol of transformation for both of us. Jake had framed his copy and hung it in his home office as a reminder of the harm that words can cause. I kept mine in my wallet, but now it represented something different, not the dismissal of my dreams, but the fuel that had powered their realization. The real test came at the next family Thanksgiving. I arrived at Mom's house in my Honda still. The same car I'd driven for years, though I could now afford any vehicle I wanted. I brought products for everyone, but I didn't make a big show of it. Success, I'd learned, didn't need to be performed. Jake arrived separately, and I watched him carefully as he greeted the family. There was a humility in his demeanor that hadn't been there before. He asked genuine questions about people's lives, instead of dominating conversations with his own achievements. When Uncle Frank made a joke about his career transition, Jake laughed along good-naturedly, instead of deflecting with bravado. During dinner, when the conversation turned to business, Jake did something that surprised everyone. He raised his glass and said, I want to propose a toast to Emma, not because she's successful, though she is, but because she had the courage to pursue her dreams, even when people like me told her she was wasting her time. The table fell silent. This wasn't the Jake we knew, the one who turned every gathering into a performance of his own success. I spent years mocking what Emma was building, he continued, because I was afraid of what it meant. If she could succeed by following her passion, what did that say about my safe choices? If she could build something meaningful from nothing, what was I really accomplishing in my corporate job? He looked directly at me. I was wrong about everything. It's about business. about success, about what matters. Emma didn't just build a company, she built something that reflects her values, that makes people's lives better, that creates real value in the world. That's the kind of success I want to learn from. The toast was met with genuine applause, not the uncomfortable laughter of years past. For the first time in my adult life, I felt truly seen and respected by my family. Later that evening, as we cleaned up, Jake approached me in the kitchen, the same kitchen where he'd handed me the napkin years earlier. "I've been thinking about what you said," he told me, "about building something with people who believed in the vision from the beginning. I want to find that for myself now, not the quick success or the impressive title, but something meaningful." "What are you thinking?" I asked. "Not sure yet. Maybe something in sustainable business consulting, helping other companies become more environmentally responsible. Or maybe something completely different. But I want to build something that matters, not just something that pays well." I smiled. "That sounds like a good place to start. And Emma," he said, "I want you to know that I'm not asking for anything. I'm not looking for investment or advice or connections. I just want to earn back your respect by building something worthy of it." "You already have my respect," I said. "You had the courage to face what you'd done and try to change. That's harder than starting any business." As the evening wound down, I found myself reflecting on the journey that had brought us to this moment. The napkin in my wallet had traveled with me from humiliation to vindication, from fuel for anger to symbol of transformation. It had taught me that the most powerful revenge isn't destruction, it's construction. It's building something so undeniably valuable that it speaks louder than any words. But more than that, it had taught me about the difference between success and significance. Success is achieving your goals. Significance is achieving them in a way that lifts others up rather than tearing them down. They say success means nothing if you can't lift your family. But I say, sometimes success is finally being able to choose who sits at your table. Not because you're excluding people out of spite, but because you're including people who share your values, who believe in building rather than tearing down, who understand that real success is measured not just in dollars, but in the positive impact you have on the world around you. The napkin would always remind me of where I came from, but it would also remind me of where I was going toward, a future where dreams aren't dismissed as pipe dreams, but nurtured as the seeds of everything beautiful and meaningful we can build together. In the end, the most satisfying victory wasn't proving Jake wrong. It was proving myself right to believe in my vision, right to persist through the doubts, right to build something that reflected my values rather than just my ambitions. The napkin had brought us full circle, from a moment of crushing dismissal to a relationship built on mutual respect and genuine understanding. And that, I realized, was worth more than any amount of money in the bank.